Welcome to the Drone Rules and Regulations section of our course. In this section, we will start with the basics of Part 107, including information on night operations and recurrent training requirements. You will learn about drone registration and reporting to the FAA. We will cover operating limitations, operations over people and vehicles, and flying from a moving vehicle. Hang tight as we explore some interesting concepts in this section. First, let's talk about why you need to register your drone. To operate a drone commercially in the United States, you need to obtain a remote pilot certificate from the FAA and register your drone with the FAA. So, what are the steps to register your drone under Part 107? Here they are. Determine your eligibility. You can register your drone under Part 107 if you're at least 16 years old, a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, and intend to use your drone for commercial purposes. Create an account. Go to FAA's drone registration website to create an account. Provide information about yourself. Provide your name, mailing address, email address, and phone number. Provide information about your drone. Provide the make and model of your drone, as well as its serial number. Pay the registration fee. There is a $5 registration fee to register your drone under Part 107. Label your drone. Once you've completed the registration process, you must label your drone with the registration number provided by the FAA. The registration number must be visible on the outside of your drone. It is important to note that registering your drone under Part 107 does not allow you to fly in restricted airspace without proper authorization from the FAA. Additionally, you must comply with all federal and state laws regarding drone operation, including obtaining any necessary permits or authorizations. In this section, you will learn about reporting to the FAA. As a drone operator under Part 107, you may be required to report certain incidents to the FAA. Here are the instructions for reporting incidents. Determine if the incident requires reporting. According to the FAA, drone operators must report incidents that involve serious injury, loss of consciousness, or property damage of at least $500. Report the incident to the FAA. To report an incident, you can use the FAA's online reporting tool, which is available on the FAA's website. You can also call the FAA's incident reporting hotline at 1-844-412-1999. Provide information about the incident. When reporting an incident, you will be asked to provide information about the location, date, time of the incident, as well as a description of what happened. You will also be asked to provide your contact information. Cooperate with the FAA. If the FAA determines that further investigation is necessary, they may contact you for additional information. It is important to cooperate with the FAA and provide any information they request. It is important to note that failure to report an incident that requires reporting can result in civil penalties and fines. Additionally, as a drone operator, you're responsible for following all applicable laws and regulations regarding drone operation, including reporting requirements. In this section, you'll learn about operating limitations. The FAA Part 107 regulations include several operating limitations that drone pilots must adhere to when operating a drone for commercial services. Here are some of the most important limitations. Fly at or below 400 feet. Drone pilots must fly their drone at or below 400 feet above ground level unless they are flying within 400-foot radius of a structure and the drone does not fly above the structure. Maintain visual line of sight. Drone pilots must maintain visual line of sight with their drone at all times. They may use a visual observer to assist with this, but the pilot must still maintain visual contact with the drone. Fly during daylight or civil twilight. Drone pilots must fly only during daylight hours or civil twilight, 30 minutes before sunrise or after sunset, with appropriate anti-collision lighting. Fly at or below 100 miles per hour. Drone pilots must not fly their drone at speeds greater than 100 miles per hour. Do not fly over people. Drone pilots may not fly their drone over people who are not directly involved in the operation of the drone. Do not fly from a moving vehicle. Drone pilots may not operate their drone from a moving vehicle unless the operation is over a sparsely populated area. Obtain permission to fly in controlled airspace. Drone pilots must obtain permission from air traffic control to fly in controlled airspace, which includes airports and other restricted areas. It is important for drone pilots to understand and adhere to these operating limitations, as failure to do so can result in civil penalties and fines. Additionally, drone pilots must comply with all federal and state laws and regulations regarding drone operations, including obtaining any necessary permits or authorizations. In this section, we will cover operations over people and vehicles, in addition to flying from a moving vehicle. Under FAA Part 107 regulations, drone pilots are generally not allowed to fly over people who are not directly involved in the operation of the drone, unless the drone has been certified by the FAA as meeting certain safety requirements. However, there are some exceptions to this rule. Drone pilots may fly over people if they have obtained a waiver from the FAA. To obtain a waiver, the drone pilot must demonstrate that they have taken adequate safety measures to prevent injury in case the drone fails or malfunctions, such as using a propeller guard or conducting the operation in a closed-off area. Drone pilots may fly over moving vehicles if the vehicles are in a sparsely populated area and the drone is not operated from a moving vehicle. Drone pilots may operate their drone from a moving vehicle if they are flying over a sparsely populated area and the drone operation does not create a hazard to any moving vehicle or any other person or property. It is important to note that obtaining a waiver from the FAA for operations over people or vehicles can be a complex process and requires demonstrating that the operation can be conducted safely. Additionally, drone pilots must comply with all federal and state laws and regulations regarding drone operation, including obtaining any necessary permits or authorizations. In this section, we discuss visual line of sight, or VLOS. VLOS is a critical aspect of safe drone operation and is required under FAA Part 107 regulations. Specifically, drone pilots are required to maintain visual line of sight with their drone at all times during the operation, which means they must be able to see their drone with the naked eye without the aid of binoculars, telescopes, or other devices. Here are some key regulations related to VLOS under Part 107. The drone must remain within the visual line of sight of the remote pilot in command, RPIC, or a designated visual observer. The RPIC, or visual observer, must be able to see the drone at all times during the operation. The drone may not be operated at night unless it is equipped with anti-collision lights that are visible for at least 3 statute miles, and the RPIC or visual observer can maintain visual contact with the drone. The drone may not be flown through clouds or other obscuring weather conditions that would prevent the RPIC or visual observer from maintaining visual contact with the drone. The RPIC or visual observer must be able to see the drone and any other aircraft or obstacles that may pose a hazard to the operation. Failure to comply with the VLOS regulations can result in civil penalties and fines. It is important for drone pilots to understand and adhere to these regulations to ensure safe and responsible operation of their drones. In this section, you will learn about waivers and authorization. Under FAA Part 107 regulations, drone pilots are required to comply with certain rules and regulations when operating their drone for commercial purposes. However, in some cases, drone pilots may need to deviate from these rules to conduct their operation safely and effectively. In such cases, the FAA provides the option to obtain a waiver or authorization to deviate from the Part 107 regulations. Here are some examples of when a drone pilot may need to obtain a waiver or authorization. As mentioned earlier, drone pilots are generally not allowed to fly over people who are not directly involved in the operation of the drone, unless the drone has been certified by the FAA as meeting certain safety requirements. However, drone pilots may apply for a waiver to fly over people if they can demonstrate that they have taken the adequate safety measures to prevent injury in case the drone fails or malfunctions. Drone pilots are not allowed to fly their drone at night unless the drone is equipped with anti-collision lights and the pilot has received a waiver from the FAA. Drone pilots are not allowed to fly their drone in a controlled airspace, which includes airports and other restricted areas, without obtaining authorization from air traffic control. Drone pilots are required to maintain visual line of sight with their drone at all times during the operation, but in some cases, they may need to fly beyond visual line of sight, or BVLOS. In some cases, the pilot may apply for a waiver to conduct BVLOS operations if they can demonstrate that they have taken the adequate safety measures. Drone pilots are required to fly their drone at or below 400 feet above ground level, but they may apply for a waiver to fly above this altitude if they can demonstrate that they have taken adequate safety measures and that the operation will not pose a hazard to other aircraft or people on the ground. It is important for drone pilots to understand the regulations related to their operation and to obtain any necessary waivers or authorizations to ensure safe and legal operation of their drone. The FAA provides an online portal called the Drone Zone, where pilots can apply for waivers and authorizations. Now you're going to take a test on the previous section. Good luck to you, and I'll see you when you get back.